Southern butter rolls.
Let's see what's cooking. It's time for Yo-Yo Max 12.
Hello everyone, starting off with a large bowl and 3 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 tablespoon and 1.5 teaspoons of granulated sugar, the same amount of baking powder, and 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. Give that a stir until combined, and then drop in 6 tablespoons of butter that's cold and cut into small pieces. And then you need to work the butter into the flour mixture. And I find the best way to do this is with your fingers, or if you have a pastry blender, that works too. You want to work the butter into the flour until the butter pieces are very small and your mixture kind of looks like breadcrumbs when you're all done. Then add in a cup of buttermilk or whole milk. Stir it around until you get a fairly stiff dough. Brought it together with my hands at the end there just to get the little pieces at the bottom, and then set that aside. And on to the filling. That's a 1/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons of packed brown sugar, a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, and a little pinch of salt. Stir that together until combined, and then now we're going to roll out the dough for this. Put it on a lightly floured surface. That's a little bit more than lightly. Then you're going to roll this out. I rolled it out using a rolling pin. You need to get a rough 12 by 15-inch rectangle. Then you're going to put a 1/2 cup of butter at room temperature, and you're going to spread that whole 1/2 cup butter all over that dough. Then add your filling. Spread that out to the edge. Just leave about 1/4 of an inch all the way around that doesn't have any filling on it or butter. And then you're going to roll it up starting from the short edge and just roll it nice and tight as you go. Roll it all the way up. And once it's rolled up, you just have to pinch the ends and then pinch the seam just so that it stays together. And then slice the log up into slices, individual pieces. The recipe says to cut it into 12, which makes sense because you get a nice dozen rolls. But for whatever reason, I ended up doing 8. So they were a little bit bigger than the recipe probably intended, but that's okay. So I put them in a 9 by 13-inch baking dish that's been greased. Because they were a little bit bigger than they probably should have been, I kind of flattened them just a little bit so they wouldn't be quite as high. And now we're going to make the sauce for these things that makes this recipe exceptionally good. That's 1 can of sweetened condensed milk. I'm going to add to that 2 cups of 1/2 and 1/2, or you could use whole milk, 3/4 of a cup of powdered sugar, and 2 tablespoons of butter, and a little pinch of salt if you're using unsalted butter. Then you're going to cook and stir this over medium-high heat until it just starts to bubble and all the sugar is dissolved. You just see it's just slowly coming to a simmer. That's when you know you can take it off the heat. Once you take it off the heat, stir in a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And then this is the part of the recipe that's the strangest. And you're going to start to doubt yourself once you're doing it. Pour that liquid on top of those rolls. They're not baked yet, of course. And as you're pouring, you're going to think to yourself, wow, that's a lot of liquid. And if you made the smaller rolls to get a dozen of them, there's a good chance they actually might float a little bit in there. It's a lot of liquid. Trust me on this. This is going to turn out just fine. Put this in the oven at 350 degrees for about 40 to 45 minutes until the rolls are puffed up, lightly brown on the top, and that liquid has reduced and starts to caramelize on the edges. So you can see here the rolls are all puffed up, and see how the sauce is getting kind of a light brown color, a caramel color on the edges. That's when you know they are done. And then you're going to serve up your rolls with a little bit of sauce on each serving. These are amazing right out of the oven. They don't taste like a cinnamon roll because they don't have that yeast bread texture. It has more of a biscuit texture. But with that sauce, it just makes something very special. It's probably something you probably never quite tasted before. Keep this stored in the refrigerator covered, and I recommend that you warm it up before you serve it because it's best when it's a little bit warm. The only thing I might change with these is maybe I would double the amount of filling in these with more cinnamon and more brown sugar. I just think it would add a lot to it, but otherwise it's a fantastic dessert. Hope you give it a try. I've made many cinnamon roll-like desserts on my channel. Here are a couple up on your screen. If you're interested, go ahead and click on them. Thanks for watching.